Q&A session that we will now open. We will try to reply to all of the questions that we have received, but please, if we have not replied to your question today, because we will close on time, so we will not go after 2. So in case we didn't have time to reply to your questions, please do not hesitate to send it to this email address, our functional email address, exchangeprogramme@ejtn.eu, and we will reply. I'll reply to your to address your question. So the first question we have received is more of a general matter or technical, let's say, was whether the slides will be available later on and whether the webinar will be recorded. Yes, the webinar is being recorded, and the aim is to upload it on the EJTN website. We hope to be able to do it in the coming days. But the slides will not make the slides available as a document. They will be available in the webinar. Now we have had several questions about eligibility, whether participants are eligible to take part or not. And some more specific regarding to the different types of exchanges. So I will start with some general questions. What are the criteria to choose a participant for these exchanges? I've applied many times, never get chosen. Well, there are different criteria. First of all, I should say that the selection is made first by the national training institution. So you send your application through the EJTN platform, but the selection is made by the national institution, and they may have their own criteria. Of course, you have to be eligible. As I mentioned before, you have to be from an EU member state, or Denmark, or the UK, or Western Balkan country for some exchanges, trainers exchanges, judicial leaders exchanges. Then after that, even if you are selected by your national training institutions, it may be that you cannot be allocated because you have chosen a country that is very demanded. So you have seen in the video that there are some tips here, maybe not to choose only very demanded countries, or to also tick this box where you can choose any other country. So that might be also a reason why you have not been chosen in the end. Now I will go more in detail about, we have a question about the requirements, about the multiple participation, you know, this condition that we have, that you cannot be selected if you have been participating in the same exchange type in the 3 previous years. So we have a colleague from Slovakia saying that he participated in 2022 on a 1-week exchange program in Belgium, now applied for an exchange program 1 week in Italy. Is it possible? Is it because it's another country? So Camille, can you reply to this question?
Yes, I can. The reply is that we do not work with country, we work with type of exchanges, meaning that if you participated in a general exchange, you can apply to specialized. If in your case you're entitled to a judicial leader exchange, you can also apply. But here there is no application of this 3-year rule or 1-year rule. If you want to apply to the same type of exchange, we are not gonna discard your application. This is not the rule. The rule is that you have less priority than a new applicant or someone who did not participate for a long time. Of course, our goal, we are the European Judicial Training Network. We are here to do judicial training, and we wish to train as many people as possible. So if the place is demanded between a person who participated the previous year and someone who never participated or participated 5 years ago, we will make a priority for the person that participated a longer time ago. This is also maybe also to mention, because read quickly also question between the different type of exchange. So if a person, for instance, is a trainer, but maybe also a judge, they can apply to the different type of exchanges, and we work really by type of exchange. So 3-year retention, if I may say, for a general exchange, but only 1 year for a trainer or judicial leaders.
Thank you very much, Camille. So we have another question that if I would like you to answer. It's if I tick the box with the box I was speaking about before, yes, in the box to be allocated in any other country other than my free selections, what happens if I change my mind later?
You cannot update your application form, but we can. So if you have any changes to your application, it also works, for instance, if you have a problem with your email address, if you change name, if you change code, this kind of information that is relevant for your application, please send an email to Exchange Programme at EJTN.eu and we will update it accordingly.
Thank you very much, Tammy. Yes, please. I can also add. So please do it as soon as possible, because whenever someone cannot go on an exchange, we need to know as soon as possible in order to find a substitute. So this is very important. If my application is declined for 2024, will I be able to apply for 2025 for the same program? I will ask Camille again to reply, please.
In theory, yes, because the only rule that we apply within the allocation made by EJTN is this 3-year rule or 1-year rule of not participating in the same exchange. This is the only rule that we apply as EJTN. But then before we receive all the applications and we make this allocation or dispatch between the different countries, there is a selection at national level. And there they might have additional requirements to select a person or not to select that person. For some country, there is a language requirement. For some country, there is a check in the different continuous training that you attended in your career. It really depends on the country and the national requirement that apply. So the best advice would be to check with your national training institution whether you're potentially beneficial to an exchange or not. Sometimes also to mention that here we're talking about the exchange program, but EJTN also offers seminars, and sometimes there is also a dispatch between if you participated in a seminar, you cannot participate in the exchange program. All those rules are really based on the national selection. So the best advice is to check with them.
Okay, thank you very much, Camille. There was a question about the criteria, about the selection, so I replied already on this one. And then, should I send you any documents that prove the language proficiency? This I can reply. Language proficiency may be requested by the national contact point, so always refer to the requirements of your national contact points. If so, you have the possibility in the online application form to upload a language certificate. You can also test your, well, I think this was the mode, test your language proficiency through the EJTN language tool that is available directly. I mean, the link is available already on the application form. And, but you don't have to send EJTN the language test. It's only whether, I mean, whenever it's requested for the general exchange, I mean, whether this is requested by your national contact point. Then I have another question on exchanges. I was selected for a general exchange and I was tutored for 2 participants, but I could not attend in the end. Is this a circumstance taken into account for the current application call? I mean, the call for applications.
Well, here, a cancellation, if I may take the occasion to give a small note about that. Cancellation is one of our worst enemy because we take a lot of time gathering all the applications. We have a lot of applications. We do this allocation process. We liaise with all the contact points. And then when we receive a cancellation, I may say that we are professional, but personally it's also depressing to do all this work to receive behind that a cancellation. So we have a cancellation policy in place, and the first rule is to inform us as early as possible about your cancellation. If on time, in 80% of the cases, we can find a substitute participant to you. So it's giving an opportunity to another judge or prosecutor to take part in an exchange. So as early as possible, please. And if last minute, please, let's limit to the emergency, the last minute cancellation. Anyway, you will be chased by the secretariat to register and to give us information about your participation. Then when it comes to the reason of the cancellation, at EJTN, here again, we do not apply any policy because we are not entitled to judge if your medical justification justifies this cancellation. So here, I would here again rather invite you to contact your national training institution and check with them whether if you have a justified cancellation, you can still participate, or if they will retain it for the future years. We do not, here again, to repeat again, EJTN, we don't have any policy, to be checked with your national training institution. But every cancellation we cry internally, so please avoid them as much as possible, or as soon as you are informed about potential cancellation, please tell us.
Okay, thank you very much, Camille. We have also a few questions about bilateral exchanges. The first one, which I will still address to you, Camille, is where can I find the video on the hosting agreement on the EJTN website?
On the EJTN website right now, the hosting agreement can be found under there is an article that has been very recently published inviting people to prepare their project. So in the latest news of the EJTN website, you will find the link to that video. To mention that this video is also available in French and in German. So you will find all the links there. And then the link will also be added to the different activities within the website. So the different project-based exchanges where this information is important.
That and on the EJTN YouTube channel as well as on LinkedIn. It has been published.
Thank you, Armin and Camille. And so then I have another question about bilateral exchanges, which is a very important one, I think. Could you please give us a hint on how to arrange a bilateral exchange, how to find a list of institutions willing to take part? And I will ask Armin to reply to this question, please.
Yes, it's a very good question. It's a very good question. So ideally, you already have a partner institution in a different member state. So you know a judge or a prosecutor or a court staff member in a different member state, and you would like to establish this cooperation a bit more. However, if you do not have a partner, what happens then? Yes, of course, you can still apply, but you can only apply once you have contacted us, and we would liaise with the national contact point of the country that you would like to visit. So you can contact us and say, for example, I would like to organize a bilateral exchange. Say I am working at the prosecution office in the Netherlands, and I would like to organize a bilateral exchange with a prosecution office in France. And we would then try to establish the contact. We would contact the national institution in France and say, well, here we have a potential interested prosecution office in the Netherlands, and they would like to organize a visit in France, and they have these and these ideas. So ideally, you would also already send us an email with potential topics that you would like to discuss and potential content of your bilateral exchange, and then we would try to find a hosting institution in your preferred hosting member state. This, however, cannot be guaranteed, but we will try our best to establish a link. Then afterwards, you would provide us in the application form, which is currently open. In the application form, you would provide us with your details. So this is what we called the role of a group leader. The group leader is basically just the person who applies for his or her institution. And you would fill in the application on the EJTN platform, and you would add the project proposal, which can be found on the Digital Training Hub and on the EJTN website. It's a document that you fill in where you establish your learning objectives and the content of your exchange, and you identify the host, you identify the number of participants, the dates of the exchange, the delegation, etc. So the general overview of what your exchange is about. And secondly, and that is probably the most important document, as we saw it earlier, you would provide a hosting agreement, and with these two documents, you can apply on the EJTN platform and then be pre-selected by your national contact point. If I skipped anything, if you would like any more specific information, please ask again in the chat so I can answer it later on, or obviously send us an email. We are always available to help.
Thank you very much, Armin. I would have another one specifically on bilateral exchanges about reciprocity, and it's a very specific question. Some participants are taking part in the bilateral exchange this autumn in Germany, and they would like to know if it is necessary to organize such an exchange for the German colleagues in their own country in 2024 or maybe in 2025. So reciprocity for exchanges.
Very good question. I love it. Very good question. Yes, reciprocity in bilateral exchanges is possible and is desired, but it is not compulsory. So it is possible to apply for bilateral exchanges as a single exchange, meaning only one-sided, one delegation from another country goes to this delegation in the hosting country, and they only visit, but they never receive ever again. And it is a one-sided exchange. It takes place once. It is possible, but it's not desirable. Desirable is that in the following year, your hosting delegation would visit you, and you would be the hosting delegation. Yes, this is a very common practice in bilateral exchanges, and it is desirable. And we urge our national contact points to also give a higher priority to projects that have taken place in the opposite direction in the previous year. Yes, and important to know is that if you would like your exchange to be reciprocal, this is very important to know. If you would like to your exchange to be reciprocal in the same year, meaning now, and as the call for applications is running, meaning in 2024, it is very important both sides must submit an application. So both sides must submit fill in the application form, must submit a project proposal, which can be content-wise the same, but with different information. And both sides must submit a hosting agreement. So every bilateral exchange, even if it's reciprocal, is considered its own project. I hope that was clear.
Thank you, Armin. I have another question about bilateral exchanges while we are on the topic.
Yes.
It's a very good one as well. It's about the composition of the delegation. So is it possible to carry out joint bilateral exchanges of judges and prosecutors?
Yes, and it is very welcome. The delegation can be composed of judges, prosecutors, or court staff all together. You can mix everybody. We even had I know it is very uncommon for certain member states because two institutions are involved. We even had the case that judges and prosecutors would have a bilateral exchange together. So in one city, a court and the prosecution office would go together. In that case, however, it's important to know that both institutions must agree. If there are two institutions being responsible for judges and prosecutors separately.
Thank you, Armin. So now we also received a few questions on the long-term training periods. First one that I will address to Flavio, is it possible to participate in a long-term training periods, for example, ECTHR, in case that this year I had already participated in a 2-week general exchange?
Thanks, Aude, and thanks for the question to the audience. Yes, indeed, it is possible. The retention policy only applied to the long-term training periods. A person who participated in a long-term training period cannot participate in any other long-term training in any other institution for the following 3 years. But there is actually no rule preventing participants who attended other projects, other activities to apply and take part in the long-term training period.
Thank you, Flavio. Another question about the long-term training periods. It was asked several times, will or are, let's say, long-term training periods also available for court staff?
Yes, unfortunately, at the moment, the long-term training periods in all the 4 partner institutions are only available to judges and prosecutors. In this sense, I invite you to read carefully the requirements available on our website and in the exchange program application platform before applying, where all the requirements for applicants are listed.
Thank you very much, Flavio. And I have some specific questions for long terms about the Court of Justice of the European Union. So I will address this to Armin because he's the one in charge. Are there any precise requirement as regards the language of French, the level of French language for the long-term training internships at the Court of Justice of the European Union? Is it possible to apply for the English-speaking writing cabinet of the court, of the judge of the court?
Yes, there are requirements, and no, it is not possible to apply if you don't speak French. So the main requirement, and this is a specificity of the Court of Justice long-term training periods. Yes, you must be able to draft decisions, to work on cases in French, and you must be fluent in French. So, and also, yes, of course, yes, you have to provide proof that you are fluent in French, and we will check this proof, and we will not send the applications that do not have the proof of French to the Court of Justice at all. So we would check this before. We would get back to the national contact points, and if no proof of knowledge of the French language is provided, then we will not send this application to the court.
If I may also add something, indeed, Armin is right. For the European Court of Human Rights, the requirement is less strict in the sense that successful applicants are allocated to the respective national desks. So it is likely that they will work in their own national language as well as in English language. Therefore, the knowledge of the French language is less strict, but it doesn't mean that it is not highly appreciated by the court, and that applicants that know French language as well might be preferred to those who do not.
Thank you, Flavio. Indeed, it's good to specify that the French requirement is applicable only to the Court of Justice. And there is another question specifically on the Court of Justice. It's about more information about what the actual work would be at the court, and about the eligibility criteria again, not the language criteria, but the experience. Is it okay? I mean, the requirements say 1 year experience. Is it okay to apply if you have 15 years experience?
Generally speaking, yes, it is okay to apply. Yes. And the second question was, or the first question was, the actual work that you will have at the Court of Justice. So as you will see it in the application form, you can at the Court of Justice apply for a traineeship of a member, so in the cabinet of a member of the court, in the cabinet of the member of the tribunal, what's it called? So the court of first instance, or at the Directorate for Research and Documentation. In the cabinets, you would work on cases for which the judge has been appointed, which the judge that you work for in the cabinet has been appointed juge rapporteur, reporting judge, or if you are allocated to the cabinet of an advocate general, then obviously a case for which the advocate general is working. And at the Directorate for Research and Documentation, you would be doing scientific research and scientific support work for the members of the Court of Justice and work on precedent cases, for example, research on similar cases, analyze cases. So it's a more analytical work on cases.
Thank you very much, Armin. Another question about the long-term training periods that I will address to Flavio. In which period the long-term training period will take place? For instance, will it start, for example, the long-term training exchange at the Court of Human Rights, will it start in January?
The starting period depends by institutions. For instance, at Eurojust, it is possible to have a bilateral agreement between the applicant or the selected applicant and the respective desk within the Eurojust. So it is possible to arrange the starting date and the ending date accordingly. While at the European Court of Human Rights of Strasbourg, France, the long-term training periods always start on the 1st of September each year and will run until 31st August of the following year. While at the Court of Justice of the European Union, the training starts also in September and in March. Am I right, Armin? The long-term training at the Court of Justice of the European Union start on 1st September.
1st of September, yes. Always on the 1st of September.
Always 1st of September for 6 or 12 months.
Exactly.
And the European Public Prosecutor's Office as well. There can be a bilateral agreement between the selected applicant and the institution.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Flavio and Armin. I think there is another question. I think it is related. It's not specified, but I think it's related to the long-term training periods. Is the heads of office authorization valid as long as it is granted once, or has it to be given each year for the following one? Based on our experience, it has to be given every year because
yes.
It may be. I mean, there are changes within the courts and that the authorization may be granted and then it's not applicable. So please make sure that you can go, you can take part when you apply. So when you submit your application. So that's it for the long-term training periods for the moment, I think. Now we will switch a bit to again, some questions of eligibility for exchanges in general. So I mentioned about eligibility, the UK. We have a specific question on that. Can you still apply if you are a judge in the UK? So I will ask Camille to reply.
We don't have any problem with EJTN, but here I would really advise you to check with the Judicial College of England and Wales, because they are the one funding your exchange. They have their own selection rules. So really, I invite you to contact them and check whether you are eligible or not.
Thank you, Camille. Another important question that is a very practical one, but very important. It was explained in the demo, but still there is a need for clarification. In the application for the general exchange, I did not understand the question about the national training institution. Does this refer to current employment?
Well, it's a tricky one because you know that the European Judicial Training Network, it's a network of judicial training institutions. And basically, you can take part as a judge to any EJTN activity because your continuous training institution is member of EJTN. So the question is rather you to know at national level who is your EJTN member. For some countries, it's quite easy because there is only one member. I would take, for instance, the example of Germany, where the Federal Ministry of Justice is coordinating the whole EJTN process. So it's quite easy to find out who is the EJTN member. For some countries, we have 2, even sometimes 3 institutions. So here, the best option for you, I think, is to know who is your EJTN member in your home country, who is in charge of your national continuous training as a judge, as a prosecutor, or as a court staff, and this will be the institution in charge of your selection.
Thank you very much, Camille. We also have some questions about language. Specifically, first of all, where can I find the language level needed for a general exchange? And I will ask the second question, which is somehow related. If I have not uploaded all of the documents, for example, language certificates, I want to do that later. Is it possible?
Regarding the language of the exchange, we recommend a B1 level for foreign language. We do not check the language requirements if you indicate B1 or if you consider that you are fluent enough to take part in an exchange. For EJTN, we will rely on your statement. Here, maybe I would just put a small attention because when you have the call for application, there are some places that are only available to certain languages. And here I think about the place in Cyprus, which is only open in Greek, or the place, some places in Portugal for a certain limit that are only open to Portuguese speaker. Don't try to get the place and then later say, oh, but I don't speak the language. It's not gonna work. So really pay attention to the language indicated in the place and apply to an exchange only if you master the language of the exchange. With regard to the certification that you speak a language or not, so EJTN, we are not gonna check it, but for some countries, the national training institution will check it. And I know that in some countries, if you don't have it added to your application is discarded. So here again, you should be informed about the requirement at national level through your national training institution and check whether they impose some requirement on the language or not.
Thank you very much, Camille. So now we also have some questions about the possibility to take part in the different types of exchanges. So is it possible to take part in general exchanges and specialized exchanges? And is it possible to take part in exchanges and study visits?
I do it?
Yes, please, Camille, sorry.
So for within the exchanges, we make sure that the person is only allocated to one exchange per year. So when I mean exchanges, is the one that I presented during this webinar, general, specialized, judicial leaders and trainers exchanges. Here, we really pay attention to avoid double allocation. So here, really not fully advised to apply to both type of exchanges because in the end, you will only be granted one. With regard to the study visit here, we are not that strict in the sense that we checked to make sure that you are allocated to only one study visit per year. But then we don't check between exchanges study visits because this is also a national choice whether you need a training or not on here and this topic. So here you can apply to an exchange and to a study visit within the same year. Maybe just also to give the big picture, the call for application for exchanges, bilateral exchange, long term, the one open now, you will only get the results by end of January. It's a long process because for some country there are hundreds and hundreds of applications. So there is a first selection at national level. Then we receive all the national selection and we allocate within EJTN. So it's a lengthy process. For the long-term training period, the profile are sent to the institution who make the selection. Here again, it takes a lot of time with selection committees. So these things to say that you will hear, if you apply today, you will hear from us if you are selected by end of January, beginning of February. Why am I saying that? Because the call for application for study visit for the first semester is open in November when you don't know if you are selected or not. We don't prevent you from applying to the study visit if you're afraid of not being selected to a general exchange, but there is a second call for study visits in April and May, so you can also choose to bypass the first call. And if you're not selected, if you don't hear from us in February, it means that you have not been selected. And then maybe apply to the study visit in April for a study visit that would take place between September and December 2024. This was a very long reply, I think.
But very practical. Thank you very much. Very good tips in your application. Thank you, Camille. There are also a few questions about the court staff specifically, so I will address them. First one is, are judicial leaders, meaning court staff managers, also able to candidate to a general exchange with court staff? Yes, indeed, it is possible. So in general, court president, chief prosecutors, court staff managers can apply to general exchanges or even specialized exchanges. But that means that they will, of course, follow a general program that is not focused on leadership and management skills. On the contrary, you have to be a chief prosecutor, a court staff manager, court staff dealing with administration and management, and or a court president in order to be able to take part in the judicial leaders exchanges, because those are very focused on leadership and management issues. Another question from court staff is, can court staff with fixed term contract apply for exchange programs? So again, here for us, the rule is that it's up to the national training institution to select the applicants. And for EJTN, the general rule is that the person has to be in service at the time of the exchange. So if you have finished your contract, then you will not be able to take part. But always refer to your national training institution in case you have a doubt. That is it. And there was also another question about, is there any exchange long-term training programs such as IACOS for court staff? We already replied a bit to that. Long-term training programs and IACOS are actually two different things. Long-term training programs is those training that we have explained about and that we have talked about in the EU and international institutions. As Flavio replied already, these unfortunately at the moment are not open to court staff. And the IACOS program is a specific program for the future judges and prosecutors, or early career and judges and prosecutors. And again, here at the moment, it's only available for future judges and prosecutors. Then I will go down to other questions. Well, we were just mentioning IACOS, so there was one question about the IACOS that I will ask Flavio to answer. Is it already possible to apply for IACOS 2024?
Applications, so to say, for the IACOS program 2024 will open at national level as of January. So EJTN does not collect applications for the IACOS program. The reason being that, as said, the IACOS program is dedicated to early career and judges and prosecutors. So we let the institutions select internally those early career judges and prosecutors, and communicate the lists to EJTN. So my advice is to contact your own judicial institution asking for the IACOS program 2024, and they will surely know, address you better. But thanks for the question.
Thank you very much, Flavio. Another question that we have is about the Judicial Learning Grant Programme. Is the budget of the Judicial Learning Grant Programme 2023 exhausted? Deadline is 15th of November, or is it still possible to apply? It is not exhausted, and yes, it is still possible to apply. So we kindly encourage you to apply if you have a project in mind that you would like to implement. Do not hesitate to do so. Now we have another question about bilateral exchanges. Concerning bilateral exchanges, is it possible to agree with a different judicial authority a bilateral exchange, i.e. a court of appeal may agree a bilateral exchange with a court of cassation of another member state?
Yes.
That was clear. Thank you. Thank you, Armin.
And even actually, if I may add one thing, if your court or prosecution office, for example, you are working at a first instance court in a not very populated area, and your court is too small and you cannot find 3 or 5 participants who can participate in a bilateral exchange at the same time, you may as well go with another court, and you can cooperate with another court or prosecution office in the same district, meaning that, for example, the local court of Village A and the local court of Village B, who both are under the district of the Court of Appeal of Town C, can go together on an exchange. So you can cooperate with 2 courts of the same level if you are both in the same district of the higher instance.
Thank you very much, Armin. Still a few questions. How many participants from every EU member state can each national contact point allocate? So this is a bit technical. In general, each national member state, or each national training institutions rather, can allocate as many or can send as many participants as they open places for. But we are, of course, it depends of the demand. It depends of how we match the demand and the hosting offer. So yes, it's not always possible to allocate as many as the host institution or the national training institution would host. I don't know if Camille, you want to say more about that. It's a very tricky question.
Yes, it's a tricky question, and if by asking this question you are wondering your chances of being selected or not, it is really impossible to give a clear reply, because it depends on your nationality. It depends on the hosting capacity of your national training institution. It depends on the competition with the other nationalities. We talked about the very demanded countries. It has an impact if you apply to a very demanded country compared to a less demanded country, where here you can still have chances, even if you are very low in the selection process of your institution. I may understand that it's a way to see if you have your chances. We can't really say that. We did the tutorial. It takes 2 minutes to complete the application form. If you have a doubt, allez, let's give a try. Complete an application, and you will see. Don't be disappointed if you are not selected. There might be competition, but there is still a chance that you may be selected. So it's a kind of see the glass half full or half empty, as you want it. But we will not refrain any application. Everyone has a chance for EJTN.
Thank you, Camille. So there is a question about how are participants' language skills tested. I think you replied a bit, but we don't test at EJTN the language skills at EJTN, I mean. So you mentioned the minimum level that we are looking at. But it may be that at national level, your national training institutions would ask you a certificate, and then they will let you know how it is tested. It maybe this is really a national procedure, so some institutions would call, or they would require some certificate, as I was saying. So this is really something that is done at national level. Us, EJTN, we really don't test language skills. We just have this self test tool that we put at the disposal of the applicants so that they have an idea, but we don't require the results of the test. So in order for you to apply. Let's see. We have a question on the study visits. Where should the exchange or study visits take place? Over what period of the year 2024? So I will ask Flavio to reply, please.
Yes, thanks for the question. So we share 2 call for applications each year, once in April and once in November. The call for application in November is related to the study visits being held in the first semester of the following year. Therefore, in November, we will open the call for application for the study visits of the first semester of 2024, while in April 2024, we will open the call for applications of the second semester of 2024. Therefore, you'll have the chance to apply in April 2024 for the study visits taking place between September and December 2024. The dates of the study visits depend very much on the institution. We decide bilaterally with those institutions where it is better to organize those institutions, so we cannot communicate in advance the dates, but we do so with the call for application. Therefore, again, in November 2023, we will share the foreseen dates for the study visits of the first semester 2024. For the European Court of Human Rights and the Court of Justice of the European Union, 5 study visits each year are organized, of which 3 per institution in the first semester and 2 in the second semester. Therefore, speaking of the European Court of Human Rights, you may be sure that 3 study visits will be organized in the first semester 2024 and 2 in the second semester. Same goes for the Court of Justice. While for the other institutions that have less study visits each year, it really depends. Sometimes when 2 institutions are available, we try to organize one in spring and one in autumn, but this is subject to bilateral arrangement between EJTN and the hosting institution. To conclude, the best advice is to wait for the call for application, again in November and April each year, and where you have an overview of the dates of each study visit in each institution.
Thank you very much, Flavio. There is another question about, I have not participated in the programs yet. I'm a prosecutor. Head prosecutor, where should I start to contact the country that interests me? Exchange program, study visits, or trip dedicated to managers. So they are different, as Armin explained. There is a big difference between project-based exchanges and exchanges. For exchanges, in which I included the chief prosecutors exchanges, and for the study visits, we have an open call for application. So you have to wait you don't have to contact anybody from the host country or from the host organizations, and you wait for the application period to open. For the chief prosecutors, it is right now. So you have to apply right now or until the 16th of October. Study visits will come later on in the year, November. But if you want to design a specific program, if you want to do to contact a counterpart to speak about a specific topic in another country, so do a project-based exchange, then you have to contact the country. And if you want to do, for example, a bilateral exchange in which you would go abroad with a delegation from your prosecution office, then you need to contact the country of your interest right now in order to be able to provide all of the necessary documents, including this hosting agreement, which we showed in our video by the end of the deadline, which is 16th of October. So in a nutshell, project-based, indeed, you have to contact the country if you want to do a bilateral exchange now in order to be able to provide all of the documents for the end of the application period on 16th of October. If you are interested rather in a study visit or a chief prosecutor exchange, then you apply now for the chief prosecutor exchange. You go on the online application form, you have a look at the list of the places available in the different countries, and you choose one, two, three. And that's it. You can choose only 3. And then you wait until the outcome of the application process and the study visits. If you want to do a study visit in one of the partner organizations, which we explained or presented a bit earlier, then wait for the specific call for application that will be out later this year. Okay, I have another question. I think we kind of already replied to it, but I will still ask it because it was asked again. Can I edit my already submitted application, in particular add annexes if required by the national institution? Camille, can you please reply to this one?
Well, yes. If you're missing annexes, maybe in that case, I would advise you to submit another application with all the documents that are necessary, and then maybe send us a quick email saying, okay, you received 2 applications from me, delete the one without the documents. I think it's the easiest way to proceed and make sure that your application is taken into account with the documents.
Thank you very much, Camille. I think we still have time maybe to take 1 or 2 additional questions. I'm a judge from North Macedonia, so not EU member. In this position, can I apply directly on the website or through our training institution? Camille, I will ask you to reply to this one also, please.
Yes. So indeed, 2 activities of the exchange program are currently open to participants coming from the Western Balkan countries under a specific project led by EJTN. So these are the trainers exchanges and the judicial leaders exchanges. If I think the two processes are running in parallel. Because of this specific project. So here I insist again, I'm only talking about the Western Balkan countries. Since the 2 processes are in parallel, I would advise you to, in one hand, apply to our call for application. So your application is on the system, you already selected your choices of country, and we can continue with the application. And in the other hand, apply through your national institution that will check with the Western Balkan project whether you can be allocated or not in this project. So on your side, I would say run the 2 in parallel. Maybe the only person I would say apply to both, but it's only for the Western Balkan countries.
Thank you very much, Camille. We still have, I would say, one last question that we can address, which is a good one, which was partly replied to, but maybe not completely. If I apply to general exchanges and study visits as well, as it was requested whether that was possible, and we said yes. And am I selected for all? What happens then? Then, Armin, can you please reply to this one?
Well, as a general exchange and a study visit are not the same exchange type, you can participate in both. If it's not at the same time, obviously.
Yes. So the advice then would be the advice that was given by Camille to maybe apply for the study visit at in the second part of the year. There are 2 calls for application, one for the first semester that will be issued soon, and then the second one for the study visit of the second semester, which will be issued in May next year. There were also a few questions about other activities that are not exchange program, the Judges at Europe Forum, or whether we have linguistic courses. We are not addressing these questions in the framework of this webinar. Please always have a look at our website, and you should have also the right contact people. The right person to contact on our website, or if not, you can also send a request either to our email, and we will forward it to our colleagues, or to EJTN@ejtn.eu, or through our general request form that we have on our website for anything that is not related to the exchange program. So I think it is time. We are just on time to close this webinar. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I hope that you had the replies to the questions that you had. There are a few that we could not reply to, but please, if that is the case for you, do not hesitate, as we mentioned before, to send us an email at our functional email exchangeprogramme@ejtn.eu, and we will reply to these additional questions that we could not address. Or if you have any other question that you didn't think about during these 2 hours, please do not hesitate to send them by email. So thank you very much again for attending. Thank you very much to my colleagues of the Exchange Programme team for being with me today, and for presenting this information webinar. Thank you very much for the interpreters, for interpreting this webinar. And I think that I wish you all a very nice day ahead. Good luck with your application. And yes, don't remember the deadline for the ongoing course, 16th of October, 6 p.m. Brussels time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.